Money issues were everything in my life. Every morning started with the same routine, checking what little food was left and deciding which meal I could skip without passing out. I wasn't dramatic about it, but hunger changes how you think. It narrows your world until everything revolves around surviving the next few hours. The blood donation center wasn't something I searched for. It appeared in my path because I was already desperate enough to notice it. A small place, clean enough, offering food in exchange for blood. Not money, food. That detail mattered more than anything else at the time because it meant I could eat that same day. I didn't feel heroic or generous lying on that chair. I felt tired and embarrassed, staring at the ceiling while my arm went numb. When they handed me the sandwich and the juice, I ate standing up, barely tasting it. That was when I understood I could come back as many times as they let me. A few nights later, while browsing forums filled with things I didn't fully understand, I found a post that didn't belong anywhere else. It talked about private blood donations, high payments, no clinics involved. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, because some part of me already knew I was going to click. Before opening the page, I sat there, listening to my own breathing and the noise of my old computer fan. There was no excitement in that moment, only the weight of knowing that once I opened it, I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen it. That pause was the last clean moment I remember. The site was simple, almost cold, almost empty, like it didn't want attention. It explained everything without decoration. Fresh blood only, collected at home, stored correctly, left in my mailbox at an exact time. Any delay would ruin the product and create problems. They didn't explain what those problems were. That lack of detail created a pressure that stayed with me. It wasn't fear yet, but it was close. The instructions were clear enough to feel professional, and that made them worse. This wasn't some random scam. It was organized. When I emailed them, the response came back almost immediately. They sent a list of supplies I had to buy and instructions so detailed they felt rehearsed. The payment amount was shocking. Enough to cover food, rent, and still have something left. I told myself I'd do it once just to get back on my feet. The first night I prepared everything, my apartment felt smaller than usual. I cleaned the table carefully, not out of pride, but because the instructions insisted on it. I kept reading them, afraid of missing something that would cost me the payment or worse. Before inserting the needle, I sat there for several minutes, staring at my arm. That pause stretched heavy and uncomfortable because my body clearly didn't want this, even if my mind had already decided. I forced myself to continue because stopping meant going back to hunger. The blood flowed slow at first, then steadier. I focused on breathing and keeping my hands from shaking. When the bag was full, I sealed it exactly as instructed, packed it with the cooling material, and placed it in the mailbox with my heart beating faster than it should have. The waiting afterward was unbearable. Every sound outside made me tense. When the mailbox was empty the next morning and the payment arrived shortly after, relief washed over me hard enough to make my legs weak. That relief is what trapped me. They asked for more blood the next time, offering even more money. I noticed my arm bruised faster. My recovery took longer, but I ignored it. Each successful pickup made the process feel normal, and that scared me more than the needles. Weeks passed, and my body began to protest in ways I couldn't ignore anymore. I woke up dizzy, my hands shaking, my legs heavy. Eating helped less each time, and sleeping didn't reset anything. I was always tired, no matter how much rest I got. Before each donation, there was a growing tension that filled the room. My breathing slowed, my mouth went dry, and my hands hesitated over the supplies. That moment before starting became longer every time, because my body clearly understood something my mind refused to accept. The emails changed tone. They stopped thanking me. They started monitoring me. They commented on the quality and quantity of my blood, suggesting improvements like hydration schedules and rest periods. The payments kept increasing, making it harder to justify stopping. When I learned the blood was being consumed, not processed, my stomach turned. That knowledge stuck with me during every donation afterward, making the act feel heavier and more invasive. Still, I continued, because stopping meant losing everything I had rebuilt. When I finally told them I was done, my message was short and desperate. I explained I was sick, weak, and couldn't continue. The reply came back colder than anything before. They told me stopping wasn't an option, and that continued cooperation was expected. I disconnected my computer that night, convincing myself that disappearing would solve it. That illusion didn't last long. I woke up with my arm aching and my mouth painfully dry, unable to move. The moment I realized I was restrained didn't bring panic immediately. It brought confusion so intense it drowned everything else. My eyes moved slowly across the room, noticing the straps, the tubes, the bags filling beside me. Other beds surrounded mine, each holding someone in a similar state. Figures moved between them wearing medical clothing that felt wrong. They didn't speak, didn't acknowledge me as a person, only as a process that needed to continue. Every extraction left me weaker. They took blood until my vision blurred, then left me alone just long enough to recover enough for the next round. Time lost meaning. I lived in cycles of pain, emptiness, and brief moments of false rest. At some point, I stopped feeling fully alive. My body existed only to be drained and stabilized. Thoughts came slower. Memories blurred. I expected death constantly, and that expectation became routine. Then the routine broke. Sounds echoed through the facility that didn't belong there. Shouting, running, metal crashing. The figures stopped coming, and fear filled the silence they left behind. The door burst open violently, lights flooding the room. Police voices filled the space, loud and shocked. Hands cut my restraints and lifted me carefully, reacting visibly to my condition. I drifted in and out of consciousness after that. Hospital lights replaced the cold ceiling. Doctors talked around me, not to me. I learned later that I was found barely alive, malnourished, and close to organ failure. Recovery took longer than anyone expected. My body healed slowly, but my mind never caught up. Simple noises made me tense. Any medical environment made my chest tighten. I tried to rebuild my life, piece by piece, but everything felt fragile. Trust became impossible. I avoided people, systems, and anything that promised easy solutions. I survived, but survival didn't feel like a victory. It felt like being left behind after something had already taken the best parts of me. Even now, I wake up checking my arms, half expecting to see tubes again.
I'm writing this because sleeping stopped being something natural for me a long time ago, and now it feels more like a failed attempt than a routine. When I close my eyes, time moves forward, but my body stays tense, locked in the same position, as if something might break into the room at any moment. I live alone now, in the same apartment with the same furniture, but everything feels heavier, even when nothing is moving. I don't look for peace here. I only look for distraction. My name is Rick, and at that point in my life, I was a university dropout with too much free time and a habit of wandering into places online where nothing healthy ever grows. Forums led to private boards, and private boards led to services that didn't bother pretending they were harmless. I didn't start exploring those spaces because of her, and that part matters more than I'd like to admit. I had already crossed that line long before everything collapsed. Valentine's Day was getting closer, and that date had weight even if I pretended it didn't. It wasn't because I cared about it, but because Lauren always did, and habits like that don't disappear just because a relationship ends. She had left me 2 months earlier, clean and fast, without yelling or dragging things out. A few weeks later, I found out she was seeing Evan, a guy from her university, one of those people who always looks calm, like nothing ever sticks to him. I didn't want someone hurt, and I didn't want blood on my hands, at least not in a direct way. What I wanted was humiliation, pressure, something that would follow her for a while and make her feel exposed. I wanted her to feel watched and uncomfortable, and that idea didn't scare me when it should have. The fact that it didn't scare me is the part I regret the most now. There's a moment before making a stupid decision where your thoughts slow down and everything feels quieter, and for me that moment stretched over several days. I kept scrolling, opening pages, closing them, and telling myself it was just curiosity while knowing that was a convenient excuse. Every time I went back, the decision felt easier, like my brain was already moving ahead of me. The sight itself didn't look dramatic or threatening, which in hindsight was worse than any warning sign. There were no symbols, no violent imagery, just text and a form that promised digital consequences using vague language. It talked about exposure, pressure, and lessons, choosing words that let you imagine your own limits without stating theirs. That should have been enough to make me leave, but it wasn't. Before filling anything out, I sat in my chair staring at the screen while the room stayed completely silent except for my computer fan. My hands weren't shaking and my breathing was steady, which now feels more disturbing than panic ever could. I wasn't rushing and I wasn't angry, and that calm made everything feel acceptable in the moment. The form asked for names, social media accounts, contact information, and then moved on to how far I wanted things to go. One option stood out, a simple drop-down labeled Choose a Punishment window, and without thinking too much about it, I selected Valentine's Day. There was no box asking me to explain or clarify anything further, and when I paid, the process ended as quietly as it started. I closed my laptop and didn't tell anyone what I had done. The days that followed were empty, and that emptiness started to feel heavier than any immediate consequence would have. No messages appeared, no accounts were touched, and Lauren's profiles stayed exactly the same, filled with photos and updates that made it clear she was doing fine. Every day without results tightened something in my chest, not because I missed her, but because I felt ignored. Before checking the site again, I sat in front of my computer longer than necessary, telling myself I only wanted confirmation that it hadn't been a scam. That pause felt worse than the decision itself, because part of me already expected nothing to happen. When I logged back in, the page showed a single line reading, "Status processing," with no details, no timeline, and no way to contact anyone. That's when irritation replaced patience, and the calm I'd had before turned into frustration. I felt stupid for trusting something so vague and for spending money on an idea that now looked childish. Valentine's Day came and went without any sign of activity, and that night I drank alone, more annoyed about being fooled than about anything involving Lauren. By the time I woke up the next day, I had decided it was over and that nothing would come of it. I told myself it was just another bad decision that would fade with time, and for a moment I almost believed it. 3 days later, someone knocked on my door. Before opening the door, I stood completely still, listening to the slow and uneven breathing coming from the other side. That pause stretched longer than it should have, and my hand hovered near the knob as if it didn't belong to me anymore. When I finally opened it, Rachel, Lauren's older sister, was standing there with red eyes and shaking hands. I had only met her twice before, but there was no mistaking her expression as she raised a handgun and pointed it directly at my chest. My thoughts emptied instantly, and I didn't try to talk or reason with her. I stepped back and ran through the apartment, focusing only on putting walls between us. She followed, but the gun never fired. I locked myself inside my bedroom and pressed my back against the door while my breathing became loud and uneven. The handle rattled once, then stopped, and I slid down until I was sitting on the floor. From the other side, her voice broke as she spoke, saying she knew I was responsible without explaining for what. She said she wasn't going to kill me and that she wasn't like me, and then she started crying while staying right there. Neighbors called the police after hearing the noise, and when sirens filled the street, officers took her away without resistance. I didn't leave that room until morning. The next day, my email refreshed automatically while I was sitting at my desk, and a single new message appeared. There was no sender name, only a subject line that read, "Thank you for your trust." And seeing it made my body go cold. Before opening it, I leaned back and stared at the screen, feeling my heartbeat slow instead of speed up. The video loaded immediately, showing grainy night footage of a forest illuminated by night vision. Lauren was tied to a chair, barely moving, with bruises layered across her face and arms. Someone off camera adjusted the angle, making sure her face stayed centered but no voices could be heard. The footage cut abruptly to daylight in the same location, where police lights flashed between trees and officers moved around a body bag. Her face was barely recognizable by then, and the final shot zoomed in on a piece of paper stuffed into her mouth. The message written on it was short and clear. For those who misbehave. The email showed that the video had been forwarded to her entire family, including Rachel. I closed my laptop, leaned over the sink, and threw up, but no tears came. Police questioned me repeatedly over the following weeks, taking my devices, searching my apartment, and combing through my online history. I answered everything they asked, and when the truth ran out, there was nothing left for me to add. The site had covered itself well, routing payments through layers that led nowhere useful. Before every interview, I sat in the waiting room staring at the floor, not afraid of being arrested, but afraid that they would stop trying. I wanted them to find something, even if it meant consequences for me, because the alternative felt worse. They asked about my relationship with Lauren, my habits, and how I spent my time online, and every question felt heavier than the last. Eventually, they let me go, not because they trusted me, but because they couldn't prove anything. The case stalled, other suspects appeared, and the world moved on. I didn't. A year has passed, and Valentine's Day is close again, even though I no longer track dates intentionally. My body remembers them without my permission, tightening in ways I can't control. I don't browse the internet the way I used to, not because I've changed for the better, but because I'm afraid of being noticed. Rachel never contacted me again, but I see her sometimes in public places, and she never looks in my direction. That absence feels heavier than any accusation she could make. I wasn't punished by the law, and I wasn't exposed publicly. Every night, I replay the form, the drop-down, and the date I selected, knowing I didn't need to choose a method for something irreversible to happen. I paid once, and even now, I'm still paying for it. I was 14 and constantly bored, which is dangerous when you are that age and don't know it yet. My parents worked late, so most days I ended up tagging along with my brother Ryan. He was 20 and acted like he was already done growing up. I followed him around because I didn't have anywhere else to be. Ryan had a friend named Manuel. He was 19 and always at our house. He didn't joke much and didn't waste words. When he talked, people listened because he spoke like everything mattered. I liked that. I wanted to be taken seriously like that. Manuel spent hours talking about the deep web, hidden forums, and videos that never reached normal platforms. Ryan laughed at him and called it nonsense. Manuel never defended himself. He just waited and kept smiling. When Manuel looked at me, it felt different. Like he wasn't just seeing a kid, like he was measuring something. At the time, I thought that meant respect. I didn't understand how wrong that feeling was. One afternoon, Manuel stopped directing his stories at Ryan and started asking me questions. What scared me? What videos I watched alone? If I ever wanted people to remember my name? He asked calmly, without pressure, which somehow made it worse. He said he had something to show us. Something real. Something that wasn't fake content made for clicks. He said it would impress me. He emphasized my name when he said it. Ryan didn't like the idea. He said I was too young and told Manuel to drop it. Manuel didn't argue. He just said it would be quick and that nothing bad would happen. He said Ryan would be there the whole time. The car ride to his place was quiet. Manuel sat in the back seat, tapping his fingers in a slow rhythm against his leg. Ryan kept glancing at me through the mirror. I stayed quiet, trying not to look scared. When we arrived, Manuel didn't greet us. He opened the door and stepped aside. The house smelled clean, but empty. No TV, no music, nothing alive in it. Before going down, Manuel asked us to wait. He stood at the top of the stairs, blocking the way, just looking at us. He smiled and told us this was the part where people usually backed out. Ryan told him to stop being dramatic. The basement was cold and silent. One light flickered above us. There were wires along the walls and old computers stacked on a desk. Everything looked set up for something specific. Manuel walked around the room slowly, checking angles, adjusting cables, testing small cameras. He didn't rush. He hummed quietly while doing it. The sound echoed in the room and made my stomach tighten. Ryan asked what all this was for. Manuel said it was proof. Proof that you existed. Proof that people would watch. Then he looked straight at me and said I was important for that proof. There was a pause, a heavy one. Manuel stopped moving and stared at Ryan. He said the only way to be known in certain places was to cross a line you could never undo. Then he said the line was killing me. For a few seconds, nobody reacted. Ryan laughed, but it came out wrong, too loud. He told Manuel to stop messing around. Before anything else happened, Manuel calmly picked up a knife from the desk. It was real, heavy, and sharp. He held it like he knew exactly how to use it. There was a moment where Manuel set up the last camera. He adjusted it to face me directly. He hummed again, louder this time. I couldn't move. My legs felt loose, like they didn't belong to me. Ryan stepped between us and told Manuel to put the knife down. Manuel said Ryan would understand soon. He said this was how people became legends. When Manuel stepped forward, Ryan shoved him hard. The fight exploded instantly. They crashed into the desk, knocking equipment to the floor. Manuel moved fast and hit Ryan in the head with something metal. Ryan collapsed without a sound. I didn't think. I ran. Before Manuel followed me, there was a long silence. No footsteps, no voice. Just the sound of my breathing getting louder as I ran through the house. I locked myself in a bedroom and slid under the bed. The floor was cold against my skin. I pressed myself flat, trying to make my body smaller. Manuel's footsteps started slow. He hummed again. The sound moved through the hallway, closer every second. I bit my hand to keep from making noise. His feet stopped in front of the bed. He crouched slowly. His face appeared under the frame, upside down, smiling wide. He laughed and grabbed my wrists, pulling me out. I screamed and kicked. I bit his hand hard, tasting blood. He screamed and stumbled back. Manuel flipped the bed with one violent motion. It crashed against the wall, leaving me exposed. He raised the knife, shaking with anger. Ryan tackled him from behind. They slammed into the wall. Manuel struck Ryan again, knocking him out. He lifted the knife toward him. I grabbed a lamp and smashed it against Manuel's head. Glass shattered. He staggered. Ryan grabbed me and we ran. Manuel didn't came after us, but we just kept running. That was the last time I saw him, at least in person. The years after that night didn't fix anything. They just added distance. Ryan and I stopped talking about Manuel completely, like saying his name could pull him back into our lives. The fear didn't fade. It just learned how to stay quiet. One night, years later, Ryan called me. His voice was low and tense. He told me to turn on the TV and switch to the news channel. He didn't explain anything else. The report showed a road outside the city, a stretch of highway surrounded by dirt and weeds. Police lights illuminated something covered by a black tarp. The reporter spoke slowly, choosing words carefully. They found Manuel's body on the side of the road. He hadn't been killed quickly. According to the report, his hands were broken first, fingers bent in ways they shouldn't bend. His face showed signs of repeated blows, not one or two, many. Enough to leave his jaw shattered and his teeth scattered on the asphalt. The worst part was his chest. Multiple stab wounds, uneven, rushed, like whoever did it wasn't trying to be clean. The coroner said some of the wounds were made after he was already dying, not to kill him, but to make a point. Ryan muted the TV. His hands were shaking. He told me he had done some digging after Manuel disappeared. Fake usernames, encrypted forums, videos that appeared and vanished within hours. Manuel kept chasing attention in places where attention is earned with blood. He wanted to be part of that world so badly, and he paid the price. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel happy. But something heavy finally loosened inside my chest. The fear that had followed me for years lost its grip. For the first time since that basement, I could sleep without waiting for footsteps. At least now, I can sleep in peace.